marketing. It's about, can you actually work with the data that's flowing through and go back to the customer and tell the customer who bought your product things that they should do to extend the life of the product, to use a new product, whatever you want. But you now have an ongoing relationship with the customer that if you leverage well can be a huge opportunity, that if you don't leverage well, then your competitor will and will take your market away. It's a very different world. Wouldn't be too surprised if 5 years from now, manufacturing companies, half the workforce in the manufacturing companies are actually service people. Parts of the world got there a long time back. So if you look at Boeing or Rolls-Royce or GE aircraft engines, and having worked with GE a long time, I know GE aircraft engines pretty well. You know, the fact that they make a big machine that lasts 50 years, that you need to maintain for 50 years, that has a level of criticality that you better maintain with, you know, pick a number, 25 sigma accuracy. The reality is that your services organization in an engine manufacturing company is as large as the manufacturing organization. But that's going to be true for every product. And that's going to be a big change in that one industry. This is the other reality, which is it is not easy to figure out what work is going to continue the way it is and what work is not. I just came back from the Bay Area having met 10 startups that are relevant for our space to see if there are things we can bring in. I mean, I saw things there that basically say you don't need anyone to do any financial analysis 5 years from now. Throw a bunch of documents and the software will read it, figure out the right algorithm, pump through various algorithms and come out with a balance sheet, a P&L, a cash flow, the way you'd like to see it. There are tons and tons of people that we have, there are tons and tons of people that our clients have who actually do financial analysis. What are they going to do? Well, you know, my view is that there's going to be new work that will get created, but that's my view. There are some other people who are saying doomsday, but that's a different topic for discussion. The other thing is, as I talked about, employees as consumers. Big data is being used inside organizations to actually then go and treat your employees in a manner. We were talking outside about early warning systems that identify John Smith, who's going to probably put in his resignation letter in the next 24 hours. If you know that's going to happen, surely you can do something with maybe a 5% chance of holding the person back. But there is big data now that you can work with on the employee side. Obviously, there are privacy and confidentiality and all of that that's got to be taken care of. But if you don't think that way, someone else is going to do it. And that's about the workplace changing. It's no longer about policies and procedures that apply to the corporation. It's policies and procedures that apply to groups within the corporation, subgroups, and individuals. And that creates a very different environment to see how you're going to run the company. It's not the traditional way of running an organization. The other way to think about the world is that it's a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And part of the leadership challenge of the next 10 years and today is going to be, are you a person who loves the black and white, or are you a person who loves the gray, and who actually thinks the world is gray? Is decision-making a binary 0-1 decision-making process, or is it a fuzzy decision-making process? The reality is, I think, the VUCA world probably argues that everything is a fuzzy decision-making process, and actually you should get really comfortable with fuzzy decision-making process. It therefore means org structures are going to be ambiguous. Leadership is going to be not that deterministically defined, and actually one should thrive in that world. And we believe that organizations, individuals, institutions, and teams that do this well are going to be the ones that are most successful. So we think there are 4 things, attributes of, and you can apply this to companies, you can apply this to organizations, businesses, individuals. Connected, innovative, adaptive, and globally effective are 4 terms that we think are important to thrive in this new world of the connected world, the disrupted world, and the VUCA world. And I would pick of the 4, adaptive as the one that's most important. We actually think, and I think, it's not important to know what's coming, because I don't think anyone will know what's coming. It's important to be able to have 2 qualities. One, do you have the antenna to figure out the signal and interpret the signal when the know what's coming is actually on the verge of coming? And you pick that signal up before someone else. And the second, do you have the adaptive capability as an individual and as an organization to turn the Titanic? It doesn't matter how big it is. So let's assume it's an organization that's globally a $50 billion organization. Can you make the Titanic go from this direction and literally overnight to the opposite direction? Completely opposite direction. Most organizations today and yesterday struggle with it. There are a few that don't. Startups absolutely don't. So the way startups actually become successful is the fact that they don't go in one direction. They go in this direction and they say, okay, let's change. Boom. Large organizations that find a way to do that, I think are going to be far more adaptive and successful than those who don't. So we think preparing a hyper change-ready organization that actually is waiting for change to happen every day, and the day change doesn't happen actually says there's something wrong. And having a team that actually has an antenna that knows how to pick up signals and interpret them, and then makes the change happen, is the way we think the world is going to be. And the last couple of slides. So what does that mean for leaders? We think leadership is about balance, and leadership is about classic balances of the short and the long, profit and growth, etc., etc. But there's one out here that I think is probably extremely important in this new world, which is the fourth one there. The ability to learn and the ability to forget. I have a fundamental belief that one of the big differences between today and yesterday is the fact that the old world of learning for 20 years in our life, using that learning for, pick a number, 40, 50 years of our life, and then spending, quote unquote, a retired recreational life for the balance 40 years of our life is not the world of today and tomorrow. We actually think the world is fine, 20 years of your life, you have some grounded education and learning so that you don't have to, you have a foundation. But really it is about pretty much learning every day and actually taking the time out to learn. So Ashima, your point I think was an interesting point of stepping back. I actually think organizations should provide avenues to step back every certain frequency that allows people to get out, learn, and come back. Individuals should be comfortable doing that. Institutions should provide the opportunity to do that. Governments should interfere, subsidize, whatever it is, to do that. So this thing about learn, earn, and retire, I think is gone. So if you think about the problem in the US, I think the unemployment problem in the US is a big problem of unemployment at the same time not being able to find resources. We have a huge challenge getting resources of what we want in the US. In spite of Michigan, 20% unemployment, it's because the skills are not what we want. So how do you change that is going to be a huge challenge as the cycle of that change is so rapid. So leaders therefore have to evolve in that continuum where they actually are comfortable with disruption and actually they deliberately disrupt. So we actually talk about leaders who, if they are reviewing a business and everything is very good, green, all metrics met, life is really, really good, then our mantra at that point in time is dive in and deliberately do 5 things that will create chaos in the business. We actually think that's a good thing to do. So you take off 5 of the 20 leaders there and move them out. Send them to better places because they're doing such a good job, get them out of the place. Create goals that are completely irrational goals to a team that's actually delivered on what seem to be rational goals. So do a few things that disrupt the business to a point of extreme fear. Because if you don't do that, I think someone else will. And the last point is therefore it means that no one has the answers, everyone is learning, you learn from others, and therefore inclusion, which people have talked about for a long time, diversity, which people have talked about for a long time, it's a business issue now that if there is not enough inclusion in the team, if there's not enough diversity in the team, I think those businesses will fail. And if there's not enough of a culture where people draw out completely opposite views to everyone else in the team, that team will fail. And therefore, I have this personal CQ that I look for in people beyond the IQ and EQ, which is, are you really a curious person? So what if you have gray hair like me, passed out of IIM and it had only ABC and nothing else? If you don't wake up in the morning and say, I need to learn 10 things that I didn't know yesterday, and the only way I learn is if I start a conversation saying, why did you say that? Not, I disagree with you. If someone says something, the first answer, the first reaction should be, why did you say that? Because I want to understand. Because maybe I didn't know something that you know. So it's a huge change. And we see this as a problem every time we deal with our teams. And how do you create this? How do you make people desperately curious as the only driver of success? And actually, by the way, it neutralizes everything else. You don't know something, how does it matter? Because after all, what you know is going to be irrelevant tomorrow morning. And that's, so if I were to leave behind one message, it would be, I think the world of the future is going to be about leaders and people and individuals and teams who have a deep CQ quotient rather than just an IQ and EQ quotient.
Any questions for Tiger?
Why is it called Tiger?
In this group, I shouldn't be, because I think most of you, 90% of you should be able to pronounce my name. Though actually, no, why should I say that? If you come from northern India, you probably can't pronounce my name still. But no, it goes back to the fact that when I was growing up in Bombay, a lot of people couldn't pronounce my name. And then we went into a poetry class in, I think it was second standard, and learned Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright by William Blake. Came out of the class and one of my friends turned to me and said, we're going to call you Tiger because we can't pronounce your name and your eyes burn. I like the second part than the first part.
Given your views about change in general, do you think the way IIMs and colleges like that teach, is that obsolete? Unless they turn the Titanic around completely overnight.
I think it's extremely obsolete. I mean, obsolete would be an understatement. And like all other change, the problem is that it's not obvious until it actually is on you and then it's too late. And that's the problem, that the forces who determine what should be the curriculum, how it's taught, whether it's the faculty, and in the case of the IIMs actually goes beyond that because obviously there is all kinds of interference there. So I think it is obsolete, and part of that is the way when we recruit, we find recruiting from campus to not solve for our needs, so we don't. We recruit IIM graduates who have worked for 4 or 5 years